Now, this code won't work yet, but what we have here is an example of us telling C# that we want this data to be given back to whoever invoked this method. And whoever invoked this method is then going to be responsible for taking this data and doing something with it, which makes our method a lot more flexible. But unfortunately, or fortunately, C# is a static language and it's important to do this, we need to tell C# preemptively exactly what kind of data this method is going to give back. We can't just say return results. Now, this would be valid in some languages, particularly dynamic ones, but with C#, we have to actually tell the compiler up front what kind of data it is that this method is going to give back to the user, or to the programmer who invoked this method. We do that with the return type. The return type is right here, and it's void. Void is a special keyword in C# that pretty much means nothing. By specifying the return type as void, I'm saying this method does or does not return a single thing. In fact, I can see an example of this by trying to do something with the invocation of add numbers. I could go ahead and say int result equals add numbers, and I'll get an error up here too. I get an error saying that you can't convert a void to an int because this method returns a void, which is nothing. So instead what we have to do is we have to tell the C# compiler that we want to return data. And because C# is a statically typed language, which means that we have to be explicit about our types. We have to, a variable can't be an integer and a float. It has to be one or the other. Same thing's true with return types. We must explicitly say that this method returns, an integer. By changing the return type to integer, two things happen. The first thing that happens is that we are now not only allowed to return a result, but we are required to. If I did not have this return statement here, this method won't actually compile. Take a look at this squiglified curly. It says return statement is missing. So we have to return a result, and the result has to be the same type or convertible implicitly to the same type as the return value, or the return type, that we defined here in line 15. The second thing that happens, the most interesting thing that happens in my opinion, is that we are now allowed to invoke the method and have its data be stored in a variable, or in fact, if we wanted to get all crazy, we could have this be nested really deep in an expression, but that makes things a little bit more difficult to read.